In this next tape, we are going to begin by discussing the first 3 steps of the program. In steps 1, 2, and 3, we begin to experience what we call in recovery a change in attitude. What so many of us have experienced as a result of our dysfunctionalities and our codependencies, we have experienced kind of an attitude inside of ourselves. And that is an attitude of what we call in the program stinking thinking. What we do is we basically look at life through the eyes of negativity. We then begin to look at life through the eyes of things that are wrong. And as a result, what happens is we then begin to experience in life everything through a negative perspective. In these first 3 steps of the program, we will now go on a journey to begin to experience the beauty of life, to look at life through a different set of glasses. And so what we're going to try to do is help you to change your glasses, to change your outlook, to change how you view life. Let us begin now with the first step. We equate these steps to almost like the concept of a 3-legged stool. These 3 steps work together as a unit. They are connected. If one is missing, there is imbalance. And that's why it's so important to put these steps together and work on them as the first stage of our process of growth and recovery. In step 1, we admit it we're powerless over our afflictions, that our life had become unmanageable. In the first step, we begin to admit and look at the unmanageability of our lives. We look at what life has done to us. We look at how we have developed life so that it does the things it does to us. And so now in this first step, we begin to experience the gift of all recovery, the most powerful gift of all recovery, and we call that our powerlessness. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams or your wildest imagination that someone would actually say to you that the greatest power you have in life is to be powerless? It's so beautiful and it's so special because so many of us live in this world of control, in this world of manipulation, that we have to learn the beautiful gift of experiencing powerlessness within ourselves. The way in which I try to describe the first step is very simple, and one thing I will try to do through all of these steps is bring them on a very simple level so you can begin to understand them. In the first step, what I have done is I have taken 5 simple basic words, and these simple words are a way for us to look at the step through the eyes of recovery. The 5 words are unmanageability. Second word, denial. Third word, powerless. Fourth word, admit. And the 5th word, accept. Now notice in the setup of these 5 words, notice the word that is in the middle. The 3rd word is powerless. Whether you will realize this or not, in this program, the higher power will give to each and every one of us as people. The higher power will give us 2 beautiful and special gifts. You may not think they're beautiful and you may not think they're special, but the deeper you get into recovery, the more this will make sense to you. The 2 greatest gifts of all recovery are powerlessness and pain. One thing about all of us as human beings, we learn from our pain. We learn from those situations that make us powerless. You see, whether you realize it or not, each and every one of us has a choice. It's a very simple choice. When we experience in our life the process of pain and powerlessness, every time you experience something happening to you in life, you've got a choice. You can either admit to it or deny it. Now, it's kind of interesting when you look at life. So many of us rarely admit to anything. So what do? One of our natural tendencies in life is to deny things. It's almost psychological. It's almost like inside of our psychic. What we do all the time is we always deny what's real. Why? Because we don't like to feel the pain of admitting and beginning to deal with things that we have to deal with. So it's easier to deny them. Look at denial. So many of us get caught up in denial because denial becomes for many of us a normal way of life. If I deny something, I don't have to look at it. I don't have to face it. If I deny it, I still think I'm in control. One of the games that many of us play when we do a lot of denying is very simply what I call a game of imaging and a game of fantasy. Now, it's kind of interesting when you get caught up in that. So many of us, when we talk about denial, remember the basic concept of all denial. Denial comes primarily from the fact that deep down inside we are very insecure and we don't like who we are. Again, we're going back to that spiritual bankruptcy. And when we experience that spiritual bankruptcy, what happens is, if I don't like who I am and have a real negative concept of myself, what happens is I then begin to deny the reality of what's in front of me. Therefore, if I deny reality, therefore it doesn't exist. That's how the addict thinks, the codependent thinks. I basically do not want to see what I see, so therefore I deny it. I want it to be what I want it to be. In codependency circles, we have a name for that. It's called great expectations. We are constantly expecting people and expecting situations and things to be what we want them to be. And as a result, we are constantly putting ourselves in turmoil and putting ourselves in denial. As a result, what happens is we then put ourselves in a situation where literally we drive ourselves berserk. The more you deny, the more your life becomes unmanageable, the more crazy your life becomes. What's so scary about it is that after a while, it becomes so normal that it becomes our normal way of life. So many of us have developed denial techniques. They're survival techniques. We've developed them over the years. We also get caught up in denial, so as a result of denial, what we do is we image. So many of us play what I call the mascot role. So many of us go around playing the actor and actress role. As a result of that, we play an imaging role. I never want people to truly see who I am. So what I do is I put a show on the outside. They're my denial techniques. Why? Because I don't want them to really know who I am, because maybe they won't like me. The reality is very simple. I don't like myself. See, I'm always looking at somebody else. I'm always putting it on somebody else. But the reality is, it's really me. And so as a result, as I deny and I image, I then create emptiness inside of me, and my emptiness creates my unmanageability. Also, what happens is I get caught up in that fantasy again, and my fantasy becomes my reality. The bottom line is, I do not want to look at reality or deal with reality. It is much simpler, basically, to avoid it. And so as a result, what happens is I continue this process inside of myself of always avoiding and running away from reality. As a result, my life is unmanageable. My life is chaotic. My life has all kinds of confusion in it. My life becomes miserable. And as a result, what do? I then look at life through the eyes of being miserable. You know what's so scary about all this? Usually, we never come to that stage of admitting to something until we have no choice. They're very strange human beings, but human beings are this way. What we usually do is we beat ourselves half to death, we wear ourselves out, we drive ourselves crazy, and as we say in the program, whenever we get sick and tired of being sick and tired, then all of a sudden we admit to it. Remember I said back in the beginning that most of us admit to nothing? Well, the reality is very simple. We usually admit to things when we have no choice. There's nothing else that we can do. But even admitting is scary. And that's why the first step is such a powerful step. Even when we admit, many of us still deny. We admit intellectually. We have a process we always talk about with codependence, which is we joke about it a lot, but it's not funny. It's that whole concept that very basically we know. Another disease that we have is codependence. It's called the I know disease. It's the admitting disease. It's all intellectual. I know what's wrong. I know the situation and I know the problem. But at the same time, I really don't accept it, so I can't do anything about it. So many of us will admit intellectually. Many of us will look at it intellectually. I have a nickname for this. I call it intellectual recovery. And many of us have to play the intellectual game for a long period of time. And what happens is I admit, I acknowledge, I admit to it, But at the same time, I still create more unmanageability. I still get involved in it. You know as well as I, many of us know exactly what's going on in our life. We know what the situation is, but we get so stuck in it, it becomes so normal for us that after a while, we admit to it, we intellectualize it, but we still can't accept it and develop the change. You see, as I said before, sooner or later we have to come to that point in our recovery where we basically get tired, where we basically wear out. When you get to that point, it's one of the highest spiritual points of life. When you reach that point of powerlessness, where you no longer can handle it, you finally come to that stage of life that's called acceptance. And that is the first step. In the first step, we experience probably one of the most beautiful and the most special moments of life. The scary part about it is that as we experience this moment and we experience this concept, we are basically experiencing probably one of the greatest areas of pain in our life. It's so scary. And we experience it primarily because we are now at that moment in our life where there are no more alibis, no more excuses, nothing left to complain about, nothing else to do. There's just me and stark reality. This is who I am. This is the reality of me. 90% of all recovery is acceptance of self. So many of us spend our whole entire life running, avoiding, and trying to stay away from the reality of who we are. In the first step, we learn one of the most positive and beautiful principles of all recovery. Until you accept the reality of who you are, you cannot grow and you cannot change, because all change comes from where you are at this moment. Every one of us, every individual person at this moment of their life is at a very special stage of life. We are exactly where we are supposed to be at this moment of our life. This is where the higher power wants us to be. This is our gift. What's so beautiful about that acceptance is, even though it's painful, is that for the first time in my life, I can look into a mirror, and for the first time, I see who I am. I see the reality of me. And for the first time, I can feel, I can cry, I can accept, and I can look at myself and say, this is me. Is it easy? No. Because it means I have to look at every part of me, my defects, my assets, every concept, every area of my life. As I look at this concept, all of a sudden I begin to see. And we have a saying in the program, all of a sudden the scales are dropped. And all of a sudden the truth and the reality of myself is there. And sometimes it's a very painful situation. And sometimes you have to cry. But it's like being all alone. It's like hurting. But it's a beautiful hurt. It's a special hurt. Because I finally acknowledge me. I have said over and over again that the greatest gift of all recovery in the first step is the powerlessness of being able to acknowledge the reality of myself. God, it isn't easy. It's a real struggle. And yet, to move out of the intellect and begin to feel, and to begin to experience being powerless, to begin to experience reality, to begin to experience self, is the beautiful gift of life. These are my limitations. These are my talents. This is who I am. These are my gifts. I have to accept who I am. And if I do that, I begin to grow. The first step leads us to the second step. Remember in the first step the importance of living in reality, living in the moment, being who you are. In the second step, we come to believe in a power greater than ourselves that will restore each of us to sanity. In the second step, we talk about a very special word. We come to believe. We come to experience. We come to open up that very special gift inside of ourself. we come to believe in a power greater than ourselves. What's so beautiful about the second step is we now begin to experience that deep down inside of each and every one of us, there is a very special and a very beautiful power. We have a name for this in the program. We call it the inner child, the inner self. You see, each of us has a beautiful potential and a beauty inside of us. And each of us has the responsibility to tap it and to touch it. And yet it's so simple and it's so beautiful. And we call these the powers of life. You see, deep down inside we have this tremendous energy flow, and this power of life that goes through us. And what's so beautiful and special about recovery is that in the second step, because we are now in reality, we can tap that power and give ourselves permission to let it grow. But also notice the wording of the second step. It says, we come to believe. What that means is that I, by myself, cannot experience recovery, that I need people around me, that I need the fellowship of other people in recovery. I need to be able to share myself with others. And that's why one of the beautiful parts of this recovery program is the concept of building a beautiful family, a healthy family. What I've learned over the years is that family is a very interesting word, and that in my life it is my responsibility to develop my real family, my recovery family, to build support systems and to build people around me that become for me my base of operation, my base of life. As I build the support system and I build these people in the program, we call it the we. See, in this program we talk about we, not I. We talk about sharing. We talk about doing things together. We talk about asking for help. We talk about being with other people. And together we have power, we have energy. What's so beautiful in the second step is I now begin to experience the we. I begin to experience developing this healthy family. Remember when I talked about codependency, how important it is for each of us to begin to look at the place where we get our needs met. One of our basic needs in life is the need for family, a need for a place to belong, a need to be around people who love you unconditionally. What's so beautiful about 12-step programs and 12-step meetings, at these meetings you can be yourself. At these meetings you can be honest and you can be open. At these meetings you are unconditionally loved. At these meetings you can even be imperfect, and it's so beautiful and so special. And so we learn the importance of building and developing that we, that healthy family, so that together we can come to believe. Together we can develop a whole process of life. In the program we talk about the higher power, the higher self. What's so beautiful about the higher power is this, that in order to explain it and to share the higher power with you, I would like to ask you to join with me a very special and a very exclusive club. It's very beautiful. I have a nickname for it. I call it the 4-H Club. Now, this particular 4-H Club you're going to join is called the Higher Power Club. In the second step, we begin to experience the 4 basic powers of life. I call them the 4 H's. The first one is the power of honesty. What does the entire program teach us? If you go back to the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you look at Chapter 5 of the big book of AA, they tell you in Chapter 5, rarely have we seen this program fail if a person is willing to become totally honest. The greatest and the most beautiful power of life is total honesty in everything we do in life, in all of our affairs. What's so beautiful about this process is that we finally learn in the second step that we have a power inside of us. What honesty does is it cleans us on the inside. It opens us up. And it makes us begin to realize that we can finally be at peace. The more honest I become, the more open I become, the more I begin to experience the peacefulness and the gentleness of life inside of me, the more I begin to grow, the more my life becomes more meaningful and more special. As I begin to experience this beautiful gift of honesty, I begin to experience power. It's a great power and a special power. And yet I'm always striving and looking for the spiritual power, for the sense of growth. And so what I do in the program is I put myself around people and in an environment that will help me to get honest. And I learn to be around people that are not afraid to tell me honestly how they feel about me, to pull my chain every once in a while, to push my buttons, to let me know when I'm not being honest. And it's that atmosphere and it's that environment that is so special in recovery. And that's why this power in the second step is so beautiful. The second H that we talk about is the power of humility. The beautiful, simplistic power of humility. You see, one of the most beautiful parts of life is called learning how to be humble. Now, what I want to share with you, which is important, is a big difference between humility and humiliation. Most of us, as a result of our backgrounds, as a result of our lives, as a result of our addictions, we have already humiliated ourselves. To be humble is different. Humility basically is simplicity. The more simple, the more less complicated, the more basic we make our lives, the more beautiful we become. It is this gift of simplicity and this gift of humility. What I have learned in life is that the greatest gift that God has ever given me is the gift of being able to ask for help, is the gift of being able to experience the beautiful gift of help, is the gift of being able to reach out and realize I don't need to do things alone anymore. I need to be part of this beautiful recovery family. They also tell us in recovery, and they tell it to us over and over again, if you really want to experience recovery, then experience it on your knees. Now again, when I talk about many of these things in the second step, remember, I am not talking about religion. I'm talking about learning to humble ourselves. And the beautiful way to humble yourself is to get on your knees. They tell us in the program, get on your knees every night before you get to bed. Ask for help. Ask that you may be able to do the things you need to do in life. And ask the higher power to be open to you. Do the same thing in the morning when you get up. Turn your day over. Be open to it. If you do this, you will experience the humility and the gentleness. I've learned to look at life through the eyes of simplicity, through the eyes of growth. What's also beautiful about this is it takes a lot of pressure off of us, because we realize that all we can do is what we can do in the course of a day. My attitude towards the day and my attitude towards life is simply to do the best I can. And that's all anyone expects of anyone in this world. Do the best you can one day at a time. Such a simple program. They tell us in the program, easy does it. Take your time. Keep it simple. In this simplicity and this beauty, we experience humility. We experience openness. You know how nice it is to be around people and to be able to share with people where you can just be open and you can be honest. You can hurt. You can be in all types of trauma. You can go through all kinds of things in your life. And to know that people will be there. They will not abandon us. They'll be around us. And they'll give us support. That is the beauty and the gift of simplicity and humility. The program also tells us that if you become humble and you develop simplicity in life, you open up your feeling centers. You open up your gut. And if you do that, you'll open your heart and your center of love. You'll come alive. What's so beautiful about this aspect of recovery, as you begin to experience it, all of a sudden, you begin to realize how simple life is and how beautiful it is. And so much around us that we complicate and drive ourselves crazy. Remember they tell us in the program, this is a simple program for complicated people? It's a sad thing that we have to complicate life so much. Life is to be celebrated and to be enjoyed. And the more you experience the simplicity of it, the more you experience the humility and the gentleness of life. The third H that we talk about when we talk about higher power is the power of humanity. You know what's so beautiful about this program? They teach us in this program how beautiful it is just to be human. God, that's nice. It's such a nice feeling to realize that all I have to be is a human being. I don't have to perform. It's so nice to give myself permission to be human. If I'm human, then I'm allowed to make mistakes. It even means that on occasion I can even fail. I can screw up. So what? I realize I don't have to live in perfection. That life is simply something that we do each day, and we try our best. And you do it one day at a time. And again, if I give myself permission to be human, what I do is I let go of all of the guilt, all the anxiety, all the craziness that I put on myself. And I realize that I have a power inside of me. It's the power of my humanity. And it gives me permission just to do what I can do. And it gives me permission to acknowledge my humanity, acknowledge my humanness. My humanness is something very special and something very beautiful. And it's important for me to acknowledge it, to be open to it, and to give myself permission to allow it to grow. As I acknowledge my humanity, I am giving myself permission to experience the gifts of life. I will learn to worry less. I will learn to be less anxious. I will learn to look at life and other people and give them permission to be human also. I'll be able to look even at other people's faults and failures and realize it's part of their humanity. What's so beautiful about this power is it teaches us not to judge. It teaches us not to be judgmental and not to knock ourselves down. It teaches us the beautiful, gentle spirit of being able to be open and being able to let people be who they are. You know what's so beautiful about this process? If you learn to be yourself and you learn to be good to yourself, then in reality, you are giving other people permission to learn to be good to themselves. We have said over and over again in this recovery program that if you work on yourself and you work on your own growth, then you won't have any time to judge anybody else or be hard on anybody else. Always look for somebody else's faults and failures. After all, they're human too. It's nice to be human. Humanity takes away that aspect of guilt and of beating yourself up. The last power we talk about in this program is called the power of humor. Learning to laugh at yourself. Whether you realize it or not, we are pretty funny. If you look at yourself in reality, you have to learn to laugh at some of the things that we do. Some of the ways in which we act, some of our behaviors. You know, sometimes we're so hard on ourselves that maybe we've just got to learn to laugh a little bit, even though it's not funny. There's a psychiatrist friend of mine that once said to me, it's kind of interesting, he said, did you ever wake up in the morning and everything goes wrong? And then around 12 o'clock, it gets worse. Well, he said around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you've got a choice. Either go sit in a corner and laugh or have a nervous breakdown. It's much easier to laugh. You know, what I've learned in recovery with my own life too, and all the years I've been in recovery, I have learned over and over again how to laugh at my past, to laugh at some of the crazy stuff that I did, some of the insanities. Are they funny? No. In fact, they're sick. But the reality is, I have to learn to laugh at them. It's the only way I'm going to let go of them. It's the only way I'm going to learn to forgive myself, to release things inside of me. And so I have to learn the power of humor. The power of loosening up, the power of not taking life too seriously, the power of not looking at life through the eyes of judgment. And if I do that, I will ease up both on myself and I'll ease up on others. What's also so very beautiful about this process of recovery in the second step is I learned the 4 powers. I learned that all 4 of them are centered around one key issue. And that is simply in the second step, I learned the beautiful gift inside of myself of self-forgiveness. I learned that as I begin to get in touch with my higher power, I learned to forgive myself, to let myself go, to begin to experience the beauty of myself as a person. As I experience this beautiful gift of a higher power, I am opening up this beautiful gift inside of me. I am beginning to experience the beautiful change in myself. It means I learn to relax more, and I learn to call upon my powers, my strengths, the things that are inside of me. And these powers and these strengths will teach me. They will help me to grow. They will teach me to experience the beautiful gift of my personhood on the inside. This beautiful aspect of recovery, this beautiful concept, teaches me the gift of what life is. See, in the second step, as the first step, what I've done is I have learned the beautiful concept of being able to look at myself through the eyes of the positive. In the first step, I looked at reality, and I shared reality. And reality gave me a lot of pain and a lot of struggle. You will notice in the first 5 steps of this program, by the way, that the first 5 steps of this program are centered around pain. And yet it's a beautiful pain. The pain changes. I guess it seems kind of ironical that I'm sitting here talking about pain as being beautiful. And yet, as you go through each stage of recovery and each of the steps, you'll begin to realize that each of us will begin to experience pain from a different perspective. In the first step, we experience it from the perspective of reality. No one wants to look at reality. Reality is not easy. Nobody wants to acknowledge reality because, again, we have to acknowledge who we are and to acknowledge ourselves. In the second step, we look at it through the eyes of honesty, humility, humanity, humor, through the eyes of learning to forgive, to heal. And if you do all this and you begin to work on it, what will happen to you is you will begin to experience a different change inside of you. And we call that the change of sanity. You know what's so scary about most of this process? That most of us in our life have never experienced serenity and sanity, peacefulness and calmness. We have never experienced the beauty and the strength of life. And so as a result, so many of us have avoided and we've missed so much of life. The second step tells us that this will restore us, this higher power will restore us to sanity. When you get in touch with your higher self, your higher child, the inner child within you, what you will do is you will begin now to experience some of the basic needs that we have in life. For example, you'll begin to experience the safety, as we talked about the we. You'll begin to experience the safety of being around people that accept you, of being around people that love you. You'll begin to experience the gift of love and what it's all about, because you will learn in the second step the importance of loving yourself, the importance of celebrating yourself, the importance of being open, the importance of growing. You will begin to experience a different vision of yourself as a person. The importance of celebrating yourself and loving yourself. In the second step, we basically open ourselves up to begin to discover the beautiful gift of our personhood. We begin to vision life through that beautiful positive set of glasses, that beautiful positive concept. What we have learned in these 2 steps is we have learned to look at life through a different set of eyes. Even though they are painful and there's struggle involved in it, we still are able to experience it and grow. This leads us to the 3rd step of the program. The 3rd step is probably one of the most beautiful spiritual steps of the program. Both the 3rd and the 11th step are called the key steps of spirituality and recovery. In the 3rd step, we learn the beautiful principle of learning to let go. One of the hardest things for all of us as codependents is our major issue of control, our major issue of dependency. We have this drive and this obsession inside of us to constantly try to control and to constantly try to make people become what we want them to become. In this 3rd step, we learn the beautiful gift of releasing, the beautiful gift of letting go. And believe me, it's not easy. For many of us, this step basically makes us take that step into life. We finally have to walk into the unknown. We walk into the world of no control. In step 3, we make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of a God as we understood Him. Notice the wording and notice the concepts of this step. In the third step, we have to learn to make decisions. One of the hardest things for us to do in life is to begin to make decisions, to open ourselves up and to learn how to make healthy decisions in our life. The one thing I would ask all of you to do right now is just try something with me. I'd like you to take two words that we have learned in the English language, and I would like you to eliminate them from the English language. The two words are right and wrong. You know what's so special about these two words? These two words are words that we learn from our childhood. These are words basically that teach us judgment. They teach us guilt. And for the first time in our life, we have to learn how not to look at life through the eyes of guilt, through the eyes of judgment. So therefore, I would like you to take two words and substitute them. See, take those two words, right and wrong, and place them in a trash can. And in substituting for them, what you do is you use the words healthy and unhealthy. You see, for the first time in our life, we have to learn how to make healthy decisions for us. In doing this, what I do is I learn the difference between healthy and unhealthy. What's healthy for me may not be healthy for you, and that's okay. That means that on an individual level, as a person, I must now learn to develop those things that help me to grow, those things that develop a good, healthy concept of me, those things that are healthy for my growth process in life. As I begin to experience this, what I'm doing is I'm learning to make decisions. In the program, they tell us that there is one key decision that we must make, the healthiest decision of life, and that is to learn to let go of our sick will. See, one of the things that we do and we constantly do in our life is we play this game called expectations. In this expectation game, we want people to be what we want them to be. We want situations to be what we want them to be. We play this gigantic game of control. What we do with control is we constantly try to make things become the way we want them. And in reality, it doesn't work. And what happens is we end up getting frustrated, we end up getting angry, we end up driving ourselves crazy, and as a result, we are constantly trying to control our environment and control everything around us. And yet we have to learn in the program to let go of control, to let go of our will, and to realize that we have to turn it over to the power of a God as we understand the God, and listen to someone else's will, and be open to growth inside of ourselves. One of the hardest things to do in the third step is to learn that process of letting go, that process of experiencing inside of yourself the simplicity and the beauty of your personhood, that beautiful process of beginning to realize that you really can't control what happens in life, that you have to look at life as a journey. You have to give yourself permission to go on the journey. Let me use an analogy to bring this out to you. It's an old-fashioned analogy. It's been around for a long time. It is what I call the jailhouse analogy. So many of us as human beings play a game. And the game we play is jailhouse building. We are probably the greatest jailhouse builders in the whole world. What we do as codependents and as addicts, one of the things that we do primarily is we love to build our own personal jail. Now, it's amazing. It really is. So many of us have spent so many parts of our life developing these little jails, these little spots in which we trap ourselves. What's a jail? A jail is a piece of territory. So many of us have always tried to map out our territory, map out our area. Then what we do is we put big cinder blocks around it. They're the walls. They're the masks, the things we keep around us because we don't want anybody to get too close to us. So as a result of our major issues of intimacy, what happens is we're always putting walls around ourselves. We're always avoiding. And inside these walls, we're in control. We're lonely. We're scared. We're angry. And yet at the same time, we keep everyone else away. Because basically, deep down inside, we don't want anybody to get close to us. But watch what we do. We build the jail, and we put ourselves inside of it. Now again, remember, we're not dumb. In every one of our jails, we always put a window. Inside the window, we put some nice bars on it. Then we get inside the jail and put a nice big strong door on the jail. We jump inside, lock it real good so nobody can get in. But see, again, we're not dumb. We always keep the key to our own jail in our hand. But then the game that we play is kind of interesting. We walk around the jail all day long, yelling and screaming and griping because we're in jail. Griping about all these things that people do to us. That's why we have the window. We yell out the window, we gripe, we scream, we yell, we complain, we carry on. And eventually what happens is, sooner or later somebody walks by the window. When they walk by the window, what happens is, maybe they'll listen to us. See, again, one of the things that we all need in the course of our life, which is kind of interesting, is that most of us need somebody to constantly listen to our craziness and listen to our insanity. As long as they listen to it, they acknowledge it, and they acknowledge our jail. And what happens is, as long as we stay inside, we're in control. As long as we're inside this whole element, we basically don't really have to make any changes. We control the situation from inside our jail. What are we scared of? It's very simple. We're scared to be able to open that door and walk out and begin the journey. What is the jail? The jail is our comfortable world, our secure world. The jail is the place where basically we can just simply put all of our little elements and control ourselves. We never really have to walk out of it. As long as I stay in there, nobody will hurt me, nobody will come near me. And again, I can control life. It's lonely inside this jail. It's scary inside this jail. And yet, I like it because it's comfortable and because I'm used to it. And because for me, it's my way of life. What's so scary about this process of the third step is that sooner or later, we have to make a decision. And it's the hardest decision of our life. We have to make a decision to open the door, to reach down into our hand, pick up the key, put it in the lock, and open the door. Now, why don't we open the door? We have the power to open it. We have the key. We have the power to open ourselves. But why don't we? That's very simple. We are scared to open the door because if we open the door, we do not know what's on the other side. We have no concept of what's on the other side. See, the scary thing for us is to walk out that door and to begin the journey. Because the journey we're talking about in recovery is a journey that we walk not knowing where it will lead us. And we have to have faith. We have to have trust. We have to have belief as we walk this journey. You see, again, we have to be able to open ourselves up and begin to believe that the journey of life will take us exactly where we're supposed to go if we are open to it. But it's so scary for us to be open because all of our lives we have lived in controlled atmospheres. All of our life we have closed ourselves off. All of our life we have lived in fear. There's an old saying that fear and guilt are two things that do not exist. That if you face your fears, if you look at your fears, they no longer exist. The same thing as regards our guilts. The scary part of it is that we're scared to look at our fears. We're scared to grow. We're scared to change. We're scared to experience newness inside of ourselves. When you walk out that door of your jail and you leave that jail behind you, you walk into a very uncomfortable world, a world of newness. And yet, even though it's uncomfortable, it's pretty beautiful. It's pretty neat. It's pretty special. It's pretty open. What that means is I now give myself permission, and the hardest thing in the world for us to do is to give ourselves permission to go on the journey. And that's why in the third step they teach us the key to recovery, the key to self-knowledge, the key to discovery of life is to open that door and to walk out. But to walk out in faith, to walk out in belief, to walk out in openness. And to realize I don't walk alone. Because on that journey there will be many people. There will be many supports. There will be many people there with me and I'll be able to walk that journey. And what the program teaches us is that if you open yourself up to the journey, then whoever is supposed to be on that journey with you will join you. It will happen normally, and it will happen naturally. You see, in this process of recovery, in the first 3 steps, we begin to experience what we call in the program, the God as I understand him within me. Again, visualize it inside of yourself. When I was a second grader, quite a few years ago, when I was a second grader, I was taught something. I was taught by a little nun in Catholic school that I was made in the image and likeness of God. Never did I realize how powerful that statement was. I had never realized how beautiful that statement was and how much it would affect my life today. If I am made in the image and likeness of God, then if I give myself permission, and only I can give myself permission, if I give myself permission to open myself up, to begin to allow the discovery of me, to believe in myself, to believe in life, to begin to look at life through positive eyes, through the eyes of faith, then all of a sudden I will discover God as God works through me. The more I grow, the more I discover, what I will realize is that I will begin to discover God within the image of my own self. Does that mean that I am God? No. It simply means that I will discover as God works through me, as he works through you, as he works through every human being in this world, because as I open the vision of my God within me, I then open it with my God within you. And I can discover from every person around me, every concept. Even my enemies make sense in this concept, because all of a sudden I realize that they also are my teachers. If I am willing to learn and grow from the experience, from what happens to me in the course of life. You see, what's so beautiful about the 3rd step, and it's called the spiritual step, is because in this step, I am literally opening my spirit, opening who I am. What I am doing is I am letting go. I am allowing myself to proceed with life. And I realize that I do this unconditionally. In the 3rd step, we learn a very beautiful and a very spiritual principle. It's called unconditional love. Unconditional life. It means that for the first time I open the door and I allow myself to walk, and I realize that my higher power, my energy, every part of me walks with me. So now I can begin to vision and look at life through the eyes of the positive. I begin to look at life through a totally different perspective. And even the negative situations that come into my life, I now begin to see them as my spiritual teachers, as my guides. And I look at all situations of life through the eyes of guides. And I begin to grow and discover the concept of what life really is. It's an adventure and it's a journey. And what's so beautiful about that journey is that all types of things will happen on it. And what I have to do is use my journey, use my walk as my teacher, and learn from each situation. People will come and go on my journey. Some will leave me, some will stay, and that's okay too. For I no longer need to control them, own them, and possess them. For I begin to realize in the 3rd step that the real gift of life, the real gift of growth, comes from within yourself, comes from your potential and your power. And you really look at others and experience others and grow from others, because other people become your mirrors. And in them you see yourself. In them you see your learning and you see your growth. That's why in the 3rd step, which is so beautiful, is it teaches us spiritually to let go, to be open. The thing I have learned in recovery is the more open that we are, the more we learn, the more we discover. I have also learned from the 3rd step that there is no one way. There is no special way. There's just life. And life is really a very beautiful thing. It's an adventure. Life is very positive. But again, it's how you view yourself. If you are positive, you can be in the middle of a garbage heap and see positive, beautiful things right inside of it. It's based on your attitude, the way you vision, the way you look at life. For example, you can place a very negative individual in a very positive situation, and they will immediately make that situation negative because they will view it through negative eyes. You can place a very positive person in a negative situation, and guess what? They'll view it through the eyes of the positive, and that situation will become positive because they'll view it through the eyes of growth and discovery. That's why it's such a beautiful experience as you go through the concepts of learning and growing. And that's why this whole concept of life is so special. As you begin to experience in the third step, you begin to experience this process of faith and belief. You see, I have to believe in the concepts of life, that things can be positive and beautiful. And what I have learned over the course of my own life is that my energy is mine. It belongs to me. And if I work on it, if I develop it, and if I am able to open that trap, open that jail, and allow myself to leave it, all of a sudden I give myself permission to begin to experience the newness and the gentleness inside of my life. And so yes, there is a God, the God that works within me, the beautiful concept of my creation. And the more I grow, the more I learn, the more I discover who I am, the more I can celebrate the gift of myself. So in these first three steps, we have experienced a very special process. We have experienced in these first three steps the beautiful process of discovery, the beautiful process of learning. We have experienced in these first three steps the beauty of reality. Let's look at them very quickly. In step one, we talked about the reality of life. Painful? Yes. We talked about powerlessness. We talked about the need for us to experience the greatest aspect of power in life. That to be powerless is to be powerful. Because I am powerful because I am admitting and accepting the beauty of self. In the second step, we learned the gift of honesty, the gift of humility, the gift of simplicity, the gift of humor, of opening ourselves up, the gift of relaxing, of enjoying life. We also learned in that beautiful step, we learned the beautiful concept of our humanity. And we gave ourselves permission to stop beating ourselves up, to treat ourselves in a very human way, and to look at ourselves through the eyes of the positive, through the eyes of the human. So nice to be human. In the third step, we learned the gift of the whole concept of letting go, of releasing. We learned the gift of letting go of our walls and our barriers and our jails. We learned the importance of opening up the little child inside of us. And we have learned in these first three steps the very basic things we look for in life. Before we can really go on the journey of self-discovery, we have to understand the needs that we have in life. What do the first three steps do for us? They teach us to put ourselves around safe people, to put us in a safe environment, and we call that the we, the fellowship, the sharing. They teach us to begin to experience unconditional love. They teach us to be around people that love us as we are. As we learn to accept ourselves, we accept others, and we do it without judgment. If we do that, we experience the gift of unconditional love. We experience in the first three steps the importance of opening ourselves up, of celebrating and playing, and of looking at life through the eyes of a child, and beginning to experience the beauty of that child, and to begin to experience the gentleness of that child, and to allow that little child inside of us to come alive, to celebrate and to experience life. We also have experienced in this beautiful aspect, we have experienced the concept of family. And if I, with support and with people around me, I can walk that journey because I know that they're there and I know that they'll support me. And my faith and my belief becomes very powerful. What I also learned in the first three steps is I learned the beautiful aspect of the growing power of pain. See, pain isn't so terrible. When I hurt, it means I have to look at it. When something strikes me, I have to look at it. I begin to realize that everything that goes on inside of me is always teaching. Even when you experience a physical pain, it means please take care of that part of my body. Please be nice to it. Your physical body talks to you. Your emotional being talks to you. Your spirit talks to you. The only problem is Are we too busy to listen? Are we not open to who we are? Are we not open to the gift of ourselves? So please, in the first 3 steps, let us learn to develop good, healthy, positive attitudes about ourselves. Let us learn to look at life through positive eyes. Let us learn to begin to affirm and look at things through the eyes of affirmation, to begin to see the beauty and the positive things inside of us, so that we can now begin to go on the healing journey, the journeys of steps 4 through 9, where we'll actually learn to work on concrete things, to make changes and decisions. We can't do that unless we have the proper attitude, the proper openness, and the proper direction to be able to do it. It becomes so important to us to stop being afraid, to stop being scared, and to realize the beautiful need inside of us to be open to this gift of recovery. The first 3 steps are very special. The first 3 steps are very spiritual. The first 3 steps teach us who we are. They teach us to vision ourselves in a whole different way. They teach us to look at ourselves through the eyes of the beautiful and the positive. They teach us to begin to open ourselves, to begin to discover. And what's so beautiful about these 3 steps is that they actually help us in our journey of life, in our journey of growth. Sure, they're painful. In step 1, we experience the pain of reality. In step 2, the pain of honesty. In step 3, the pain of growth. And yet, when you look at growth, even the struggle you have to do to grow, it's a pain that's worth it. It's a struggle that's worth it. Honesty is a beautiful thing. Does it hurt? Sure it does. But the reality is, it's real. And it helps us to become a human being. And what's so beautiful about these first 3 steps is they teach us that life is simply an attitude. That life is an experience. So please celebrate it, enjoy it, be open to it. Life is something that you should experience, and every part of life, look at it through the eyes of learning and growing. Remember that sometimes we're teachers and sometimes we're pupils. And if we're open to both of that, we'll always be learning something. And that's the humility and the simplicity and the beauty of the first 3 steps. We will now move on to steps 4 and 5, and will now begin the journey of self-knowledge. I hope that these first 3 steps have helped us to begin to really understand and look at ourselves through the eyes of growth and through the eyes of celebration.